Hey Rebels, welcome back to the channel. So the charts are telling us it's time to make that fuck you money. If you missed the boat on Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's okay. There are plenty of other opportunities left in this market, but the window is getting smaller and smaller. Okay, so I'm going to walk through some charts right now that I think are looking pretty bullish. I want to walk through some other charts that I would avoid because effectively what we need to do in this market, if we want to, like the party is on, like we're starting to party right now, but if we don't walk in and pace ourselves, we're going to get too drunk too quick and we're going to get wrecked. Okay. So effectively what we need to do is, yes, we're very bullish. This is probably the most bullish that I've been on the altcoins this entire time. I've been bullish on Bitcoin since 2022, basically. But right now, I think we're just starting to see the beginning signs of the altcoin season, and it's going to be very exciting, but it's also going to get us wrecked if we are not careful. So I'm going to walk through a few charts that I'm seeing right now that I would avoid, and I'm going to walk through a few charts that I'm seeing a little bit more favorable entries, because effectively what we want to do is we want to enter the market with a minimal amount of risk with a larger reward. Okay, so I'm just going to kick us off real quick with this is the total two divided by Bitcoin. What this is saying is the altcoins versus Bitcoin. And you can see that most of the time, altcoins do not fare very well against Bitcoin. And then there are very small windows where we have a rapid appreciation in the altcoins versus Bitcoin, a rapid appreciation between altcoins and Bitcoin. So effectively what we did last cycle is we broke this trend line, and that basically kicked off the alt season. And then we had a very explosive move in the tail end. This one, we've kind of had a prolonged down period, but we did just break this trend line. This is the first time that this has happened in 3 years. So that is very significant. This is a very significant trend line that we've just broken. And right now we're forming higher highs, higher lows. We just broke this swing top right here. So that doesn't mean it's up only. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy money, but you can see the journey that we have ahead. And you can also see this a little bit more clearly in the Bitcoin dominance as well. Conversely, when Bitcoin dominance falls off a cliff, that's basically Bitcoin yielding to the altcoins, and it happens very rapidly, where it targets the range lows very rapidly before Bitcoin resumes its dominance in the market, right? So for the last several years, since 2022, effectively, even back in since 2021, effectively, Bitcoin has been the dominant force in this market, and this is the largest decline that we've had, and that actually came to match our trend line basically perfectly on a weekly time frame. We are right now coming to test this channel. Basically, we're in an upwards channel, and when we break this channel, effectively, we have a lot of downside, a lot of room for Bitcoin to yield to the alts. So that's basically those are the only options right now. Because if you look at Bitcoin over the last, several years, I mean, we've been up for a very long time, basically since 2022. November 2022, we kicked off this bull market. We've been up ever since. Ethereum, basically, been a very terrible ride. It's not been an easy ride for ETH holders. However, in the last couple months, we've had an absolute tear, breaking this trend line right here, fourth time breakout, basically over a year consolidation in this zone, and now targeting the all-time highs here. So if you're just arriving to the market, or really anybody, this looks like a very exciting chart. This looks like a chart that you want to get in. That's not really the case, especially since we are starting to see some kind of overextension on the daily. I'm not going to zoom in on the daily right now, but on the daily, we have more than 7 bars in one swing direction. If you're swing trading, you don't want to be getting in at the end of the move, because effectively this is going to look exciting. You're going to get in at the end of that move, maybe something like this looks very exciting, and then you can see what follows. I'm not expecting anything like this to follow. You can actually see my previous video that I did at the beginning of the week to do a weekly analysis. We are kind of entering a seasonal time that we should be aware of. But either way, what I'm seeing right now is ETH, not necessarily a good risk to reward, because I mean, even if we do breach into all-time highs here, which I absolutely believe that we will enter price discovery, we actually have a very similar support and resistance line with Ethereum that we do Bitcoin. And I'm not saying that we can't break this trend line, but I would say we're going to see heavy resistance, right? And so, somewhere along here, even if we go into let's say we go into March of next year, that's a price point of $9,000 basically. So effectively a 2x. And hey, getting 100% gain is amazing in crypto, but we just basically missed over a 250% move on Ethereum. So basically, what I'm saying is, it's not that you can't make money in Ethereum, but Ethereum is way more hyped, and you're seeing it a lot more in the news, and you're getting absolutely outrageous price predictions. But from a technical view, Ethereum, really risk reward probably should have entered somewhere around this trend line, or at least on support of this trend line, and you would have experienced a nice 200 some percent gain. So that's one chart that I would avoid right now. No worries, there are many charts, and we don't have to be too darn worried about we don't really have to be too worried about it. There are many opportunities in these markets. Another one that I'm seeing is Hyperliquid. I think we can probably zoom down to the daily as well. So Hyperliquid is a decentralized exchange. It seems to be very strong for this cycle. I mean, it absolutely came out of nowhere, and we're basically in it's in the top 20, I think, already. Basically just kind of came out of nowhere, performing very well. But this, again, is not necessarily a chart you want to get into. I was very fortunate to basically get in around an average price of $12, which just happens to be, I mean, it wasn't the exact low, of course, but I mean, this chart was looking better when we were looking a little something like this, when we were down sideways for a long period, down for a long period, and once we broke this trend and started breaking these tops here, then it was basically on for young and old. Okay, so again, not saying that Hyperliquid is not going to perform in this cycle. I believe that it will. I believe that it actually has quite a bit of upside to it. But again, these are just not necessarily things that you want to be getting into right off the bat. I think we want to try to find things near the lows. If our goal is to buy low and sell high, let's try to find other opportunities that are maybe a little bit closer to their lows. Okay, so what I have here is a price extension. I've talked about this in many videos, but it's basically just a fib trend, the trend-based fib tool, and I have 1 and 150 and 200%. So if Hyperliquid did a 100% move projected from this low and did a similar move, this is the price target. And again, you can see from current prices there, 50%. It's nothing to scoff at. Got all the way up here to the 200%, but still 130% move. However, we basically have already missed out on, if we didn't capture the lows, we've already missed out on a 260% move. Okay, and that's okay. It's okay that we missed out on that. That's not really a big deal. The other one that I wanted to mention too, and if you've made money on this trade, congratulations. It's been faded by a lot of people, but XRP is another one. Again, it's in strong territory, and I think we're actually in all-time high territory right now. But again, we've already had the most major move, basically from the accumulation zone to current prices. That's 400%. That's a 5x already. Not necessarily the thing you want to be getting into. Okay, so now I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying that these aren't going to make more money and not going to continue to go higher through the rest of this bull market. I do believe that. I think there are still a few multiples left in these, just based on the liquidity that's going to be potentially coming into the market. But I'm just going to go to a few other ones that I'm seeing right now that I think are a little bit more favorable. Okay, so this one right here is Sonic. We have this downtrend we've been seeing for a very long time. I'm not saying that this is exactly when you want to get in. You might want to wait for a little bit more strength to come into the market, but either way, breaking this trend line was a good sign. And one thing I'm going to go to is DeFi Llama, just so that we can see. This is another tool that I like to use to see how these layer ones, like what is the TVL on these layer ones, like how much money is actually on the network, right? So Ethereum's kind of like the base case, right? Like that's the number one altcoin, 95 billion, and then you go on down the line. Solana has 10 billion. Sui's another very hyped up one. They have $2 billion. Hyperliquid actually surpassed Sui, which for the first time that I've seen in quite a while, 2 billion. You can see the TVL is marching up. That's what we want to see. We want to see people actually putting their money to use on these chains. And so why don't I just look up Sonic real quick to kind of get a look right here. So actually, shit, this is something that I haven't seen in quite some time. Wow. Okay. So let's say versus Sonic versus Say. These are two layer ones that I've been tracking for a while. Okay, so for a while there, Sonic was looking very well, but so far TVL has dropped off dramatically there. Not saying that the price can't go up, but I like to kind of couple just a little bit of fundamental with the technical, right? So you can see here that Say is a layer one that hasn't really gotten any attention yet, right? Nobody's talking about Say until the price. Nobody was talking about Ethereum, in fact, until the prices are at where they were today, and everybody was saying that Ethereum was dead. And you can see how strongly Ethereum has reacted to that Ethereum is dead narrative, basically, right? So nobody's talking about Say, which is a layer one, and you can see that the total value locked has just been climbing very steadily whilst, let me go to the chart, while the chart in general over a longer period of time has been trending downwards. Okay, so for me, a safer entry for Say would be a break of this trend line, because this is a very major trend line. Anytime you try to get into the market before you break major trends, you increase the chances that you're going to be wrong on that trade. Yes, you get a better price below these levels before the breakout, but it's the insurance premium that you pay. So these are the things that you're going to have to make up your own mind and decide for yourself. But right here, even an entry on a break of this swing top from here to all-time highs, that's 184%. And I believe most of these are going to go into price discovery, absolutely. So, I mean, you still have 4 or 5x potential pretty easily in a lot of these things. Now, I will go back to Sonic because I'm not saying, like I said, technicals or fundamentals are one thing, technicals are another. On a macro level, so far, we have printed a higher low here, which is a pretty bullish sign. And then the other thing I want to mention too that is quite common in the charts is basically just a W recovery pattern. Just a double bottom or a W pattern, and then a lot of times you will form a higher low here, then you break higher. So the risk reward here, what I'm getting at with the risk reward is even if you were to enter at these prices, because I guess on a shorter term, we've broken this particular trend. And if you wanted to buy support on that trend right there, okay, let's just say you do that from here to the downside, that's 20% to the downside. Whereas Ethereum, if you were to enter now, we could absolutely come back to retest some of these prices in here. 25, 26%. Ethereum is probably not the best example, but you can just see that this farther to the downside. To the lows, that's 70%, right? So there's a lot more room to the downside in this chart to the lows, to those same lows, right? 70% to the downside for those lows, and then for Sonic, you're at 20%, and you have a pretty favorable risk to reward there as far as that goes because you have 200% to the upside. So there was a lot. That was a lot of blabbing, but really what I'm getting at is you want to find charts that have decent fundamentals. It's not the most important thing, as I've kind of discussed with the Say and the Sonic. Those are both layer ones that I think are going to do well. They're just haven't seen their heyday because they haven't got the attention. They won't get the attention until prices have gone up. That's effectively what's going to happen with any of these altcoins that you find. I would really stick to the top 100 because for now, because I think that eventually we will get into a phase where we can kind of go a little bit farther down the risk curve as more and more participants start entering the market. I think that we will be able to go farther and farther down the risk curve. I just don't think we're there yet. So honestly, I think some of the safer bets are the layer ones in the top 100, okay, that have a reasonable risk to reward. So one method that I will use, let's just pretend like, again, that shorter term downtrend we broke, we come down for a retest. Let's say you wanted to get sneaky and you wanted to buy that retest. Okay, well, what you can do is you can set that stop loss at these lows effectively. That's 21% to the downside, and then you could take most of your profits here. I mean, 200% gain is amazing, and there are other ways to project prices, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. And that is a really good risk reward. That's a 10-to-1 risk reward. So for every dollar that you are risking, you have the potential to make $10, okay? And then if it goes against you, you can just see, well, your risk is relatively small. So what I will do, and leave comments down below if you want me to talk a little bit more about using leverage. What I use leverage for is basically just a way to manage my risk. So effectively in this trade, let's say I had $500 to trade with, but I don't want to put all of my $500 in Sonic. Okay, I want to maybe diversify against not diversify, but I maybe want to spread my bets across a few trades because this one could go against me and I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. Okay. Well, this is 20% to the downside. And it just so happens that if I use 5x leverage, I will get stopped out of the trade at 20%. So what I could do is I could put $100 at 5x leverage. That would allow me to basically it would allow me to reduce the risk because instead of putting $500 on this trade of my own money, I'm actually only putting $100 of my own money in this trade. And then I will get stopped out if prices go below these lows. And my thesis right now is that this is the structural low across the market, effectively, that these June lows are the structural low. And if that is proven to be wrong, then I lose $100. I don't lose the $500, but I did. But if I am right, then I have a $500 position that I can go and then earn that 219% on. Okay. So anyway, I probably will do a little bit more on leverage trading and how to use that for managing risk. But hopefully this was helpful. There are certain things you want to avoid the hype, and a lot of the things that people are saying are dead or where there's no attention, the train leaves empty. Basically, that's exactly what happened for Ethereum. Especially, I mean, it was looking very, very weak. It was looking very, very dire for Ethereum. And everyone, even people who have been in the space for a very, very long time, were calling ETH dead at this point. And you can see that was the exact moment that things turned around. There were no more sellers in the market. And that's basically all there is to it. When there's more buyers than sellers, price goes up. When there's more sellers than buyers, price goes down. Okay. When everybody's saying that it's dead, it's probably a better time to get into the market rather than when we're up at these prices and you're seeing news headlines across the board with crazy price targets for Ethereum of $20,000, $60,000 on all the rest of it. Things to keep in mind. Okay. So anyway, if that was helpful, please like and subscribe. Let me know down below if that was helpful. And maybe if you want any other altcoins that you want me to discuss. I just went through a couple random ones that I'm keeping an eye on. There are many, many charts to look out for. I think one that I had shown was Dogecoin on the thumbnail, looking like we broke that trend down for a retest, kind of have a swooping bottoming pattern right here. And basically same thing that happened earlier in the year. And we're also basically potentially finding support here too. And Dogecoin right now, 100% to the upside. And if you want to put your stops down here, same thing, 20% to the downside. You use 5x leverage. It does breach these lows, then we find another entry. Maybe basically, if you wanted, even if you just wanted to rack up a few chances to get into the same token, rather than putting all your eggs in one basket and diving right in and losing that money or selling it at a loss, you can use that leverage to maybe just put $100 into the market at a time and eventually hit the low and then ride it to the top. Okay. So anyhow, hopefully that was helpful. We'll see you in the next one. Later, guys.